Good evening, dear listener. Find a cozy spot, perhaps tugging your blanket a little closer, or taking a slow, calming sip of tea. Close your eyes gently and take a deep, soothing breath. Inhale the quiet night. Exhale any lingering thoughts. Let yourself sink into the softness of your pillow, as if settling into a quiet harbor after a long voyage. Tonight I invite you to a strange and subtle world, one that whispers softly of shadows and echoes from a distant past. Imagine a place where silence isn't quite silent, where whispers drift like faint currents through ancient halls, and where the air itself seems to hum with secrets. Picture a curious object, neither modern nor ancient, yet somehow both. Something that might be hidden in the folds of history, waiting to change everything we thought we knew about connection and solitude. As you listen, imagine that this world isn't quite like your own. The noise of everyday life, the endless drone of notifications, the tangled mess of earbuds, the queue at the bank, fades into the background. Instead, there's a gentle breeze carrying a faint, almost musical hum, like the whisper of leaves on an ancient olive tree. Shadows flicker softly against the walls, and somewhere, a faint, persistent murmur of voices, though no one is quite sure where they originate. And as your eyes grow heavy, you'll soon find yourself waking not in your familiar surroundings, but in a place where air thickens with mystery, where the air itself seems charged with stories of long ago, and where your role might be far stranger than anything you've known. The scent of dampness and something sharp, perhaps vinegar or burnt herbs, lingers in the air, making your nose twitch. You're not quite sure where you are, but the dim light sifts in through a tiny, grated window, high above, casting jagged shadows that dance across plaster walls, their surfaces mottled with the grime of ages. A faint, persistent hum vibrates in the background, perhaps the distant clang of metal on stone, or the muffled voices of passers-by outside, hurried footsteps echoing across cobblestones. Your clothes feel coarse and scratchy against your skin, rough wool and linen that seem to have seen better days. You notice a stiff, worn cloak draped over a nearby chair, its fabric smelling faintly of sweat and age. Your hands instinctively move to adjust the rough fabric of your tunic, and as you do, you realize how cold and stiff it is, almost like wearing a bag of sand. Your mouth tastes of stale bread and something metallic, perhaps the water you drank earlier, or the wine that's long gone sour in your stomach. Somehow, even the simplest act of breathing feels textured, almost deliberate, as if the air itself is thick with stories you'll never fully grasp. A sudden noise pulls your attention, an irregular clang, like a blacksmith hammering away at a stubborn piece of metal, followed by the distant bleating of goats or the scurry of small animals. Somewhere outside, a bell rings sharply, slicing through the murmur of voices. You hear footsteps, light, hurried, approaching the door, then stopping just outside, as if someone is listening, waiting. The scent of burning herbs mingles with the faint aroma of cooked meat and the acrid smoke of a nearby fire. The room feels heavy, weighted with centuries of life, yet somehow alive with quiet urgency. Your first instinct is to sit up, but the coarse surface beneath you surprises you. No soft mattress here, just cold stone and rough woven mats. You realize how different this is from the cushioned beds of your modern world, where comfort is a given. Here, your idea of a bad morning was probably a flat tire or a missed notification. Now it's realizing that your mask, whatever strange thing it is, smells worse than the patients you're supposed to help. You chuckle softly at that thought, irony tingling at your senses. With a cautious hand, you reach for the nearest piece of clothing, a heavy woolen tunic, and pull it over your head. The fabric scratches against your neck as you struggle into it, then grasp the rough cloak, feeling its coarse fibers against your fingertips. Outside, the sounds continue, muffled voices, the clatter of pottery, the distant murmur of a market. You can see figures moving through the narrow streets, men in tunics, women with veiled heads, children darting past with wide, curious eyes. Some glance your way, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and caution, as if you're a strange creature from another world. You notice a group of people gathered nearby, perhaps villagers or patients, their faces marked with worry or exhaustion. Some lie on stretchers, moaning softly, while others tend to them with quiet care. A healer, clad in a simple tunic, moves swiftly past, herbs in hand, her face calm but tired. The crowd's reactions to you are subtle, respect tinged with a hint of fear, perhaps curiosity about the strange object you carry or the unfamiliar way you move. It's as if the very air around you whispers that you are both outsider and witness, a ghostly visitor from a different time. As you take in this scene, a sense of disconnection washes over you, like stepping into a painting where the colors are muted, the details sharper than your modern life. The chaos of daily routines, the endless notifications, the constant hum of technology, all of it feels distant now. Here, life is measured in sounds, smells, textures, and the silent stories written into every stone and shadow. And yet, amid the strange familiarity of human life, people caring for each other, facing hardships, working with simple tools, you sense a deeper mystery lurking just beneath the surface. You realize that to understand this world, you must step back and view the larger picture. For now, you are a visitor, a quiet observer, awakening in a place where every breath is a story, every shadow a whisper from the past. And as your consciousness settles into this unfamiliar rhythm, you begin to see that this is not just where you've woken up. This is where the story truly begins. You find yourself living in a time where the very air seems thick with stories, whispers of gods and mortals intertwined, and the scent of olive oil and incense lingers in every corner. It's the classical age of Greece, perhaps somewhere around the 5th century BCE, a period when city-states like Athens and Sparta weren't just places on a map, but living, breathing entities shaped by ideals of democracy, strength, and philosophical inquiry. Imagine the world in which you've awakened, a tapestry woven with marble temples, bustling agora markets, and armies that march with the echo of drums and the clatter of bronze armor. This is a time when society is structured like a grand amphora, carefully balanced but fragile at the edges. At the top sit the aristocrats and noble families, those who own the land, the ships, and the power to sway the city's fate. Below them, the merchants and artisans keep the wheels turning, trading everything from olive oil to intricately carved vases, often in markets more chaotic than a modern Black Friday, but with more goats than shoppers. The common folk, farmers, laborers, and craftsmen, live close to the earth, their days dictated by the rising and setting sun, their lives a series of repetitive yet vital routines. And then, of course, the slaves, an integral, if often overlooked, part of this intricate social fabric, whose labor sustains the entire city, but who hold little voice in the grand decisions. Power is concentrated among a few, whether it's the elected officials in Athens, the military leaders in Sparta, or the priests who hold sway in the temples. These rulers, often chosen by birth or strength, make decisions that ripple out to affect everyone else. Yet, in this world, luck plays a surprisingly large role. Survive a bad harvest, and your family might starve. Succeed in a debate, and you could rise from a humble artisan to a respected statesman. It's a society where wit, strength, and sometimes sheer chance determine who prospers and who merely survives. Step outside and the physical environment paints a vivid picture. Cobblestone streets winding through crowded city centers where vendors shout to sell their olives and honey, their voices bouncing off marble columns and sun-baked walls. The marketplaces are noisier than a modern shopping mall, but with more pigs and fewer electronic distractions. In the distance, the Acropolis stands like a giant stone sentinel, its temples gleaming white against the bright Athenian sky, while nearby a small village spreads out with humble homes made from sun-dried clay and wooden beams, their doorways open to the warm, dusty air. Life here is rhythmic and unhurried, yet not without its peculiarities. The day begins with the ringing of bronze bells or the crowing of roosters echoing through the streets like the original wake-up call. People toil in fields, craft in workshops, or gather in the agora to debate, barter, and exchange gossip that sometimes sounds more like a theatrical performance than practical conversation. Taking a bath? Well, that's almost suspicious, something akin to announcing to your neighbors that you're planning mischief. Cleanliness isn't a matter of routine, but of reputation. The idea of washing often carried a whiff of vanity or suspicion, especially if you did it in public baths, where everyone could see you prance around in just a towel and a frown. Your modern frustrations, waiting in line for Wi-Fi or trying to light a damp fire, pale in comparison to the endless, sometimes bizarre, chores of daily life here. Forget gyms. Carrying buckets of water from the river or chopping wood for the fire was the medieval CrossFit of the day. Imagine trying to get a good night's sleep with the constant chatter of traders, the distant clang of smiths, and the occasional owl's call punctuating the silence. And of course, the unending parade of superstitions, like carrying a handful of onions in your pocket to ward off evil, or sniffing soaked flowers soaked in vinegar to keep illness at bay. Some believed that simply wearing a particular amulet could save you from the plague. Talk about organic medicine. Meanwhile, the political landscape is a whirlwind of ambition, war, and divine intervention. City-states vie for dominance, their armies marching to the beat of drums and the shouts of generals. Invading armies, unpredictable alliances, and the occasional plague keep everyone on edge. No one is quite safe, and luck often determines who survives the chaos. The gods ever present in daily life are both feared and revered. Temples rise high into the sky, offering sacrifices and prayers, while superstitions about omens and signs rule the minds of the populace more than any written law. Religion isn't just a matter of faith, it's woven into every part of life, public and private alike. The gods are capricious, their favor sought through elaborate rituals and offerings, and their anger feared more than any enemy. People believe that a bad omen, like a crow cawing at the wrong moment, could spell disaster, so they watch the skies and listen closely to the whispers of priests and oracles. And if you're curious about the oddities of belief, consider this. Some believed that carrying a handful of onions could ward off the plague, while others swore that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar was the safer bet. Proof that even in ancient Greece, people took their health and their superstitions very seriously. Now, as you listen to all this, the bustling markets, the marble temples, the debates and superstitions, know that this is a world of striking contrasts. It's a place where the grandeur of democracy and philosophy was born alongside the dirt and sweat of daily life, where the divine and the mundane danced hand in hand. This glimpse into their society, their struggles, and their strange, vibrant routines sets the stage for what's to come. Because, just like the everyday chores and quirks that shape their world, your journey here is only beginning, and soon it will be time to look closer. down to the microcosm of everyday life where the true stories unfold. So, take a breath and prepare. Your adventure into this ancient world is about to deepen as we zoom in to discover how they lived, loved, and navigated the mysteries of their extraordinary age. You slowly wake up, the faint light filtering through a small open window, casting a gentle glow across the rough-hewn wooden beams of your simple home. The air feels cooler now, a reminder that the night's chill still lingers, wrapping around you like an old blanket that's seen better days. You stretch, your muscles protesting, with a stiffness that's familiar. No soft mattress here, just a hard cot or a woven mat on the uneven floor. Your first thought is to wash away the remnants of sleep and perhaps the day before. Dirt, sweat, and whatever else clings to you in this world. You reach for the small basin made of rough clay, or perhaps a battered wooden bowl placed nearby. As you dip your hands into the cold water, it feels like a shock, sharp and invigorating, yet somehow comforting. You splash some onto your face, feeling the icy rush sting your cheeks, and then wipe your face with a coarse cloth, rougher than any towel you've known. The scent of damp linen mingles with the faint aroma of smoke from the nearby fire, and you wonder if the soap you long for exists in this era. Probably not. Instead, you might add a few drops of vinegar or crushed herbs to the water, hoping that a splash of herbal bitterness can substitute for your modern skincare routine. Forget your 10-step cleansing ritual. Here, survival involves splashing some water and crossing your fingers that the smell won't scare off the neighbors. The practice of hygiene is a curious thing. Many believe that taking a full bath was either a sign of vanity or downright suspicious, like announcing you had something to hide. Instead, they relied on perfumes, scented oils, or dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, or sage, burned as incense or tucked into small pouches to purify the air around them. You might see jars of vinegar used as a deodorant or a disinfectant sitting on the shelf alongside dried flowers and bundles of aromatic herbs. They'd sprinkle a little on their clothes or wrists, hoping to mask the natural musk that modern deodorants would make you cringe to think about. The bathroom itself, well, it's a modest space, a simple wooden bench, a basin of water, and maybe a small mirror, if you can call a polished piece of bronze a mirror. Walls are dark and uneven, the smell of burning wood from the fire curling upward, filling the room with a smoky, cozy aroma. The furniture is sparse, just enough to get by, with a few clay pots and utensils scattered about, their surfaces rough to the touch, bearing the marks of years of use. The floor creaks beneath your feet, uneven and splintered, whispering secrets as you move. As you examine yourself, you notice your clothes, heavier than anything you'd wear today, woven from coarse wool and linen, meant to withstand the elements but feeling like a hug from a very prickly hedgehog. A tunic, perhaps, heavy and itchy, with a rough belt cinched tight around your waist. Shoes. Likely simple leather sandals, uncomfortable and stiff, more of an obligation than a choice. You squirm, feeling the tightness and the roughness biting into your skin, and marvel at how your modern idea of comfort is a far cry from this. Here, wool that scratches your skin is just part of life, like wearing a scratchy sweater in winter, but all over. It's a far cry from the soft cotton and stretchy fabrics we take for granted today. Now, breakfast awaits, probably a piece of hardened bread, dry and crumbly, with a slice of aged cheese or a bit of leftover stew. The taste is plain, the texture's rough, but it's enough to keep you going. Imagine biting into a piece of bread so hard it feels like gnawing on a brick, followed by a sip of water from a clay jug, lukewarm, perhaps slightly salty, from the mineral-rich well water. Modern coffee or cereal, not here. The morning routine is more about necessity than pleasure, about getting through the day with what little you have. No fancy skincare, no showers with scented gels, just a quick splash of water, a brush with a twig or a rough cloth, and maybe a prayer or a small ritual to start the day. You might wear an amulet or a small charm, something to ward off illness or evil spirits, and whisper a quick prayer to the gods asking for good health or favorable winds. Perhaps you burn a little incense, a mixture of herbs and resins, hoping that the fragrant smoke will purify your surroundings and your mind. It's a far cry from the high-tech routines of today, but somehow these simple rituals hold their own kind of magic, an act of hope, a small rebellion against the chaos of the world outside. As you prepare to step out of your humble dwelling, you can feel the textures of your life, rough stone, coarse fabrics, smoky scents woven into every breath and movement. Your skin might itch from the wool, your muscles stiff from the cold, yet there's a strange comfort in knowing that this is life as it's been lived for centuries. A life built on simplicity, necessity, and the quiet hope that the day will bring just enough to get by. And so you gather your belongings, perhaps a small bag of herbs, a worn cloth, or a simple tool, and prepare to face the world outside. Your morning routine, humble and rough as it is just the beginning. It's a ritual of resilience, a dance of survival, setting the stage for whatever comes next. Now that you've immersed yourself in these intimate details, feeling the textures, smelling the scents, tasting the humble fare, it's time to leave the sanctuary of your home and step into the larger world where your day of work, social rituals, and unforeseen surprises awaits. Because, after all, life in this time is a constant balancing act between dirt and dignity, superstition and science, comfort and necessity, and you are right at the heart of it, living, breathing, and enduring just like everyone else before you. The ground beneath your feet is a patchwork of uneven cobblestones and dusty dirt, each step stirring up a cloud of fine dust that settles on your ankles and makes your throat itch. The sky above is a vast, cloudless expanse, the sun glaring down like a watchful eye, casting long, harsh shadows that dance as people move past you. The streets are alive with activity, merchants shouting to sell their wares, children squealing as they chase each other through alleyways, and craftsmen hammering away at their tools with rhythmic clangs. You're already wearing your most recognizable object, an ancient version of a mask, perhaps a leather or linen cover with a beak-like extension filled with herbs and fragrant resins. It's your badge of authority, or perhaps a necessary shield against the unseen threats that lurk in the busy, bustling city. The mask's rough texture presses against your face, its scent a mixture of dried herbs, smoke, and a faint whiff of vinegar, making your nose twitch. Today, you are a healer, a keeper of health, expected to serve the community by examining the sick, prescribing herbs, and sometimes performing rituals that might seem strange to modern sensibilities. Your role is vital, yet it's also a source of equal parts respect, suspicion, and outright fear. Children stare at you, their eyes wide with curiosity, then flicker with a trace of terror, as if you might be some strange creature from a myth. Women clutch their children a little closer, eyeing your mask with a mixture of hope and dread. Men nod politely, but their eyes dart away quickly, uncertain whether to trust the man behind the beak. The other villagers, merchants, and farmers all recognize your presence, whispering among themselves about whether you're a miracle worker or just another bearer of misfortune. Some give you a wary nod, others cross themselves or mutter a prayer under their breath. You feel the weight of their gazes, a mixture of reverence and skepticism, as if your very presence might tip the fragile balance between health and illness. As you move through the crowded streets, your feet crunch over gravel and the sounds of the marketplace swell. Vendors hawking dried figs, olives, and goat cheese, their voices blending into a constant hum. The smell of roasting meats wafts from a nearby stall, mingling with the sharp aroma of dried herbs and the faint, acrid sting of smoke from a nearby fire. The air is thick with the scent of baked bread and the sweat of laborers, and you can taste the dust that settles on your tongue, gritty and persistent. Your hand rests on the small pouch of herbs hanging from your belt, leaves of rosemary, thyme, and perhaps a sprig of mint, each one chosen for their supposed healing powers. You carry a small knife, a wooden stick for stirring herbal poultices, and a vial of vinegar which you might use to clean wounds or mask odors. Your movements are deliberate, cautious, your senses heightened by the constant need to detect signs of illness or danger. Your role is clear. Your job is to examine, diagnose, and sometimes soothe. You listen to the coughs and wheezes of the sick, feeling the texture of their skin, the warmth or chill that signals fever or cold. You inspect their bodies for signs of decay or infection, pustules, rashes, swollen limbs, touching and observing with a calm, measured patience. Your workday is a series of small rituals, pouring herbal infusions, burning fragrant resins, offering prayers to the gods to ward off pestilence. Some believe that carrying a cane or a staff isn't just support for walking, but a tool for poking or inspecting patients from a safe distance, especially when the disease's nature is uncertain. Others think that the smoke from burning certain herbs inside your mask creates a kind of medieval aromatherapy, driving away spirits or sickness. You might even have a small collection of charms and amulets, lucky stones, carved talismans placed strategically on your person, each one supposedly warding off evil or illness. As you move among the villagers, you're acutely aware of the mix of respect and fear your presence commands. Children hide behind their mothers, clutching their little amulets or cloves of garlic. Elders nod solemnly, perhaps recalling old superstitions that say a healer's touch can tip the balance between life and death. Your interactions are quick, often punctuated by murmured prayers or cautious glances. A merchant might offer you a small cup of wine, not just as a gesture of hospitality, but as a ritual, an offering to the gods or a way to calm your nerves before entering a sick room. Your duties may involve visiting homes, examining patients lying in their beds, coarse blankets and worn mattresses, and applying poultices made from crushed herbs and mud. You might burn the clothing of those who succumbed, believing the smoke carries away the disease, or sprinkle vinegar and herbs around their sick rooms to purify the air. Each task is a sensory experience, the scent of burning herbs, the rough texture of linen, the sticky warmth of a poultice pressed against a fevered brow. The sounds of coughs and groans fill your ears as you work, mixed with the distant clang of metal, the shouts of street vendors, and the murmur of prayers. Sometimes you feel a strange mixture of pride and anxiety, pride in your role, yet a lingering fear that every patient might be the next victim of something unseen. And yet, amidst the chaos and the superstition, certain quirks of your profession emerge as almost humorous, like the belief that smoking tobacco inside your beak mask would keep diseases at bay, or that a well-placed charm could ward off the worst. Some doctors carried a cane, not just for support, but to poke and prod from a safe distance, avoiding the contaminated touch. Others swore that simply wearing a particular herb-filled pouch was enough to keep the plague at bay, almost like a medieval version of a health app, but with more incense and fewer notifications. The community moves around you in a blur of activity, markets bustling with traders, priests leading processions, soldiers training in the open fields. The rhythm of their lives is dictated by seasons, festivals, and the ever-present threat of war or pestilence. You're part of this living, breathing tapestry, performing your duties with a mixture of reverence, skepticism, and, admit it, sometimes a bit of bemusement at the strange rituals and beliefs that seem almost comical from your modern perspective. Behind every busy market stall and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear, the unspoken dread that unseen forces might strike at any moment, and that your role as healer is both a blessing and a burden. To understand why your patients look at you the way they do, we need to step even further into their world, into their beliefs, their superstitions, and their collective fears, because in this ancient city, every cough, every prayer, and every ritual is part of a much larger story, one that you are now woven into, whether you like it or not. You feel it in the way the air around you thickens with unseen weight, a silent pressure that presses against your skin, whispering of fears too heavy to voice aloud. It's in the way the villagers glance over their shoulders when you pass, eyes flickering with suspicion, eyes darting toward the shadows where malevolent spirits are said to lurk. You hear it in the distant toll of the church bell, its sound echoing through the narrow streets, an ominous rhythm announcing another funeral, another soul claimed by the invisible enemy of disease or divine wrath. The streets are silent now, save for the muffled whispers of prayers muttered under breath, as if words alone could block the horrors lurking in the air. The heavy, smoky scent of incense clings to the stone walls of the temples and homes, a fragrant fog meant to purify the space, to ward off the malevolent miasma, the corrupt, rotten air that everyone believes carries sickness and death. You see it in the packed churches where the faithful kneel in rows, clutching their rosaries or amulets as if they were life jackets amid a storm. Candles flicker weakly, casting long shadows on the frescoed walls, their flames trembling like the hope that still survives amid the omnipresent dread. Here, faith is woven into the fabric of everyday life, an unspoken contract with the divine that, if honored with signs of reverence, prayers, and offerings, the wrath of the gods might be softened. Before every task, every meal, every step outside, people cross themselves, whispering prayers for protection, as if their words alone could shield them from the chaos. They make the sign of the cross over their children's foreheads, over their fields, over their sickbeds, each gesture a small act of defiance against the chaos that threatens to consume everything. Images of saints and angels adorn every corner, painted icons, carved wooden figures, embroidered banners, each a talisman against the unseen horrors. You might find yourself passing a procession of monks singing psalms, their voices rising like a prayerful tide, or entering a temple packed with flickering candles, and the scent of burning incense, thick as a fog that clings to your skin and clothes. The aroma of frankincense and myrrh mingles with the sharp tang of burnt offerings, as if the very air is filled with the prayers of generations desperate to stave off death. Today, in this world, you might scroll through the endless scrolls of your own mind, your modern comforts, your social media feeds, your endless stream of notifications. Here, people clutch rosaries or amulets as if they were life jackets in a storm. Their daily routines are punctuated by rituals, superstitions, and objects that serve as talismans against the chaos. Some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket can ward off the plague. Others think that whipping themselves in the streets, sometimes until they bleed, can earn divine mercy or at least attract the gods' attention. You might laugh quietly at the absurdity, but it's all part of the fabric of their fears. For most, superstition is a kind of safety net, an attempt to control what cannot be controlled, the spread of disease, the hunger that gnaws at their bellies, the punishing hand of divine justice. The belief in spirits and ghosts is woven into every aspect of life. Spirits of ancestors, spirits of the land, malevolent demons that hide in the shadows. People speak of them in hushed tones, their voices trembling with a mixture of reverence and terror. They hang amulets and charms around their necks, carve symbols into their doors, and perform rituals to keep these spirits at bay. It's almost amusing to think that some believe that a simple symbol or a chant could keep a deadly miasma from creeping in, or that the blood of a sacrificed animal might purify the air. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Sometimes, in moments of quiet, you might catch a villager whispering a prayer to a saint, their voice trembling as they plead for protection, or see a group gather around a fire, chanting and swinging incense, hoping to banish evil spirits with their collective voices. And yet, these rituals are not just about warding off disease. They serve to reinforce community bonds, to remind everyone that they're not alone in their fears. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys, rising, swirling, and filling the air whether you want it to or not. It unites and divides them, forging a collective sense of vulnerability and resilience. The threat of the plague is ever present, looming like a shadow over every gathering, every meal, every moment of rest. Famine, war, divine punishment, these are all part of the same dark tapestry woven into their daily lives. Sometimes accusations fly fast and fierce, blaming witches, heretics, or outsiders, fearing that evil influences have infiltrated their community. Lynchings and mob violence are not uncommon when someone is suspected of consorting with spirits or practicing forbidden magic. People flee in mass, their faces pale with fear, their footsteps echoing in the emptying streets, as if the very ground they walk on might turn against them. In this world, you are both a part of these fears and a witness to them. As a healer or a spiritual guide, your role is ambiguous, trusted by some, despised by others. They look at you with a mixture of hope and suspicion, praying you are a savior, fearing you might be just another agent of death. When you pass, eyes follow your every move, lips mumble prayers, and hands clutch charms, as if your presence alone could tip the scales of divine favor or wrath. Some mutter blessings, others cross themselves hurriedly, and a few shoot you wary glances, silent accusations or desperate pleas bundled into a glance. You might find yourself chuckling inwardly at the strange rituals, some believing that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, others convinced that blood offerings or wearing particular herbs in their hair could protect them. It's a bizarre yet strangely comforting dance with the unknown, an elaborate game of faith, fear, and hope. The community is always on edge, alert for signs, omens, or whispers of the divine judgment that could strike at any moment. The air is thick with stories of past plagues, divine punishments, and miraculous recoveries, each one a whisper in the collective consciousness. Behind every prayer and every superstition lies a simple truth. In a world so fragile, fear is as constant as the sun, as unavoidable as the night. It seeps into every corner, coloring every interaction, every prayer, every ritual. And yet, amidst the shadows of dread, there is also a strange beauty, a shared resilience, a collective hope that somehow, through faith or chance, they might survive another day. Because, at the end of it all, even in a world heavy with fear, people still reach for one another, holding on, trusting in the unseen, clinging to the fragile thread of life that connects them to hope and to each other. And beyond the prayers and charms, there are bonds, fragile and human, keeping life moving forward, surprisingly resilient in the face of darkness. You notice how, despite the shadows of fear and the harshness of daily life, people still cling to each other with a quiet desperation and a tender resilience. It's in the way neighbors lean on each other, not just for bread or warmth, but for the kind of comfort only another heartbeat nearby can bring. A hand on the shoulder, a shared look across a crowded agora. These are the silent promises that life, fragile as it is, continues. Even amidst the turmoil, you see how bonds form in the smallest gestures: an exchanged loaf of bread, a whispered warning, a quick hug in the marketplace. These are the threads that hold the fabric of the community together, woven tight enough to withstand the worst storms, or at least to give everyone a reason to keep going. When you look inside someone's home, you see the complex web of family ties, multi-generational households where the line between support and confinement blurs. Imagine a family where the children sleep in the same room as the grandparents, sharing a flickering oil lamp and stories that blend into the night. Forget Netflix family dramas. Here, your cousin might sleep on the cold, uneven floor just 2 feet from you every single night, in a ritual of proximity that's as much about safety as it is about obligation. The old grandmother, with her sharp eyes and a voice that's barely above a whisper, keeps watch over everyone, her presence a pillar of stability and a reminder of the weight of ancestral duty. Children grow up knowing that family isn't just a source of love, but also a network of chains, obligations to marry, produce heirs, and uphold family honor. In some households, the constant hum of chores and expectations can feel like a prison, yet it's also the only shelter against the chaos outside. And yet, even in these tight-knit groups, friendship finds a way to blossom. Small acts of kindness that make life bearable. You see neighbors helping each other repair a broken pot, sharing a cup of wine, or whispering advice in the shadowed corners of a tavern. These moments are the heartbeat of the community, simple gestures that remind everyone they're not alone. You might witness a young man lending a dagger to his friend for a nighttime walk, or a woman sharing a handful of olives with the neighbor's children. Her smile a little brighter than the rest of her face. But trust is fragile here, like the thin ice on a winter pond. One wrong step, and it might crack. Rumors spread quickly, an accusation of witchcraft, a quarrel over stolen goats, a whispered suspicion about a neighbor's strange behavior. Friendships, no matter how close, are always tinged with the fear that someone might betray the community's fragile peace, or worse, bring the wrath of the gods upon them all. And then there are the love's secret glances and stolen moments that flicker like fireflies in the dark. Imagine the trembling hope in a young man's eyes as he catches a glimpse of his beloved across a smoky tavern. Maybe he promises to meet her beneath the olive trees at sunset, if the gods are willing, or if the neighbors aren't watching too closely. Perhaps they exchange a quick touch of hands, or a whispered vow to marry once the danger of the plague or war subsides. Tinder swipes? Here, it's a glance across the crowded agora, a promise of a dance if the fiddles don't break, or if the gods smile kindly on their union. Love is as much about patience and secrecy as it is about passion. Every stolen meeting, every hidden note, is a small act of rebellion against the chaos outside. Within this tangled web of bonds, hierarchies shape the way people relate. Your position at the top or bottom of the social ladder influences how much trust, respect, or suspicion you command. Nobles regard the peasants with a mixture of condescension and disdain, while the peasants look up with hope and fear. Hope that someday they might rise, fear that they'll be crushed by the weight of their masters. Clerics and priests hold sway over moral and spiritual matters, their words often as binding as the laws carved into stone. And you, the outsider, the healer, or the plague doctor, occupy a strange middle ground, respected by some, feared by others, never fully trusted. To some, you are a divine messenger sent to save. To others, a potential agent of the god's wrath, or even the devil in disguise. People whisper behind your back, crossing themselves when you approach, or muttering prayers that you might be an instrument of divine wrath or a vessel of healing. Community life is punctuated by collective rituals, festivals, processions, and funerals that serve as both celebration and collective mourning. You find yourself among the throngs dressed in bright robes, the air thick with the smell of roasted lamb, honeyed bread, and incense. The streets fill with the sound of flutes and tambourines, the rhythmic stomp of feet, and the murmurs of prayers lifted to gods and spirits alike. You feel the cool touch of a priest's hand as he offers a blessing, or the rough grip of a farmer's palm as they shake yours in greeting. These gatherings reinforce the bonds of shared faith and shared fears, turning individual anxieties into a communal chorus, sometimes harmonious, sometimes discordant. But not all social ties are tender. Rivalries simmer beneath the surface, disputes over land, jealousies over lovers, disputes over honor that have spilled into violence. Rumors and gossip spread like wildfire, an accusation of witchcraft here, a quarrel over a dowry there. Sometimes these tensions explode into chaos, lynchings, accusations of treachery, or mass exoduses from villages. Fear fuels these conflicts, and the community becomes a mirror of its own suspicion, a place where trust is fragile and everyone keeps one eye open. You, as an outsider or healer, become a figure caught in this web, sometimes a confidant, sometimes a scapegoat. People glance at you with a mixture of hope and suspicion, praying you'll save them, fearing you might be the cause of what ails them. When you pass through a crowded square, you notice the whispers that follow you, some asking for cures, others muttering curses. You hear the hushed voices, he's the one they say can see spirits, or he's just another charlatan waiting for the plague to claim him first. And humor? Oh, there's plenty of that, sometimes dark, sometimes light. Like the village who believed that if you sneezed during a wedding, it was a sign of good fortune, unless it was your mother, in which case it was a sign that the gods were displeased, or the town's custom of public punishment, which was less about justice and more like a twisted form of entertainment. People gathered to watch a thief whipped or a heretic branded, their laughter mingling with the clang of metal and the crack of whips. It's a strange kind of spectacle, like the medieval version of reality TV, except with more blood and less commercial breaks. And of course, some odd beliefs linger, like the idea that carrying a dead frog in your pocket would ward off evil spirits, or that wearing certain charms could protect you from the worst of the plagues. In some villages, people believed that if you sneezed at the right moment during a festival, it would bring good luck, unless, of course, the wrong grandmother was nearby, in which case it was a curse. The community's relationship with the spiritual is a tapestry of hope, fear, and sometimes outright absurdity, stitched together with the thread of shared stories and collective anxieties. But even in a world built on fear and superstition, there is a strange comfort in human connection. You realize that beneath the layers of suspicion and caution, beneath the masks and rituals, the fundamental need to belong, whether to family, friends, or the community, remains the same. Because in the end, even in a society trembling on the edge of chaos, it's these bonds that keep the fragile flame of life flickering. And perhaps it's in these relationships, clumsy, tender, sometimes strained, that the true resilience of human nature is revealed. Because after all, what keeps the world turning isn't just the gods or the rituals, but the unbreakable, unpredictable ties that bind us to one another, woven into the very fabric of life in this ancient, trembling world. The air is thick with a medley of scents: faintly sour vinegar, the smoky aroma of dried herbs, and the distant salt-laden smell of preserved fish. The feast laid out doesn't resemble the grand banquets of the nobility with their glinting silver and exotic spices. No, this is the everyday table, modest yet familiar, where survival is seasoned with the simple pleasures of bread, salt, and whatever seasonal produce the market has brought that day. You notice the bread, crusty, dark, with a tough, uneven surface, like a hardened shell that hides a soft, chewy interior. It's placed on a rough cloth or perhaps a battered trencher carved from a hollowed-out loaf of bread, its edges uneven, evidence of hurried slicing. Nearby, a small bowl of coarse cheese, perhaps made from goat or ewe's milk, adds a salty tang, while a few eggs, boiled or fried, provide a burst of richness amid the austerity. The textures are no frills, wooden spoons and carved knives, some with handles, smoothed by countless hands, are your only tools. You might also find a small pitcher or cup, simple metal or clay, holding a weak ale, its flavor as muted as a foggy morning, with a slight bitterness that awakens the senses more than it satisfies. Water collected from a village well tastes earthy and cold, a reminder of the land's quiet patience. For the wealthier, the menu might include roasted meats, poultry perhaps with a sprinkle of herbs and a drizzle of honey, if luck and abundance have smiled on them. Spices like pepper or saffron, rare and expensive, transform a humble dish into something more refined, while dried fruits, figs, dates, or apricots offer a hint of sweetness that can momentarily lift the spirit. But for most, the daily fare is humble: grain porridges simmered with beans or lentils, seasoned with garlic and herbs, served alongside a slice of coarse bread that absorbs every drop of the savory broth. You can almost taste the grain's earthiness, the robustness of a meal that has sustained generations of farmers and artisans. Before you eat, a quick ritual unfolds. Hands are washed in a basin of cool water, sometimes scented with a sprig of sage or rosemary, as if to cleanse not just the dirt, but the burdens that cling to daily life. A prayer might be whispered, an invocation to the gods of harvest or a simple plea for gratitude before fingers grasp the bread or scoop up the stew. The order of the meal reflects hierarchy. The host or elder often begins, breaking bread and offering the first morsel to the gods or ancestors with a small prayer, then passing it around in a measured, respectful manner. Portions are carefully measured, a sign of restraint in a world where excess is a luxury and hunger is a constant companion. Religious days impose strict rules: no meat on certain days, only fish or vegetables, a pause in the usual feast to honor divine will. And yet, even in austerity, there's a strange poetry in the act of eating. How hunger sharpens the senses, turning a simple taste into a revelation. The sour tang of vinegar, the saltiness of cured fish, the faint bitterness of herbs, these flavors become more vivid when your stomach isn't bloated with modern convenience, more like a handshake with the land itself. Sometimes, after a day's labor, you might join others in a tavern where the table extends into the street, crowded with neighbors sharing bread and stories. The rough wooden surface is layered with crumbs, remnants of past meals and laughter. The clatter of clay cups, the scrape of knives, and the faint hum of music from a nearby lyre or flute fill the air, blending with the murmur of voices, some jovial, others tense with gossip or rivalry. The community gathers not just to eat, but to reconnect, an unspoken understanding that in this shared space, their stories, their struggles, and their joys are woven together. Sometimes a dispute erupts over a spilled cup or a stolen piece of cheese, reminding you that even the simplest meal can be a battleground of pride and possession. The smell of roasted meat or baked bread is often accompanied by the sharpest of whispers, rumors about land disputes, jealousies over lovers, or the latest gossip about a neighbor's misstep. You might chuckle quietly at the absurdity. How in a world where wealth and power are measured by the size of a feast or the rarity of spices, everyone still seeks comfort in the familiar act of sharing a meal. And humor is never far away, perhaps a jest about a neighbor who tried to hide a fish in his cloak, or a story about a merchant who got lost in the marketplace and returned with a basket full of the wrong herbs, thinking they were gold. Odd beliefs also flavor these moments. A village legend says that eating a particular fruit during a festival can bring good luck, unless an unlucky grandmother is nearby, in which case it's a curse. The community's relationship with food and drink is a delicate dance, one that sustains not just the body but also the spirit, reinforcing bonds and reminding everyone that, despite the hardships, they are part of something larger than themselves. As you finish your modest meal, you feel a gentle warmth grow within, familiar, grounding, almost like the slow pulse of a heartbeat. With the last crumb, the village breathes out, settling into the quiet anticipation of what comes next. Soon, the evening will call for music, laughter, and small acts of bravery, moments that chase away the shadows of the night, at least for a little while. And in these simple, shared rituals, eating, drinking, talking, you find the true sustenance, the gentle thread that keeps the community alive and human, even in the face of hardship. Lanterns sway softly on their cords, casting pools of amber glow amidst the long, stretching shadows that reach across the cobblestones. The smell of warm beer lingers in the air, mingling with the dampness of spilled ale and the faint, earthy scent of damp wood and moss. Somewhere nearby, the quiet murmur of laughter and the distant clatter of wooden mugs echo through the narrow streets, an unspoken reminder that even in times of worry, life persists with a stubborn, unyielding rhythm. As you move along the bustling thoroughfare, you notice the lively hum of the tavern's interior spilling out into the street. Inside, the benches are uneven, the wood creaking beneath the shifting weight of patrons. The flickering light of a fireplace throws dancing shadows onto walls lined with dusty, scratched surfaces. Men and women sit shoulder to shoulder, their faces flushed from drink or the warmth of the fire, engaged in games of chance, dice tumbling like promises of fortune, only to land with a disappointing thud, as predictable as a bill arriving at the end of the month. You hear the sharp, metallic ring of a coin being tossed, the faint scrape of a carved board, and the cheerful, if off-key, singing of a group trying to outdo each other with a tune that makes everyone smile despite its imperfections. The dice roll across the table, clattering like the promise of luck, and falling as suddenly as a note cut short, like a bolito that never clears. You might find yourself drawn to one of the simple instruments, an alaúde with its strings stretched tight, a rebeca that wails like a lament, or a flute that sings with the breath of the wind, its melodies weaving through the smoke and laughter. Some dance in a slow, steady circle, feet moving in patterns as old as the stars, their boots marking the beat on the uneven floor. You feel the sweat of effort and joy, a sweet, earthy aroma rising from the dancers' bodies as they sway, caught in a shared moment of abandon. The rhythm is gentle but insistent, a pulse that keeps time with your own heartbeat, reminding you that even in this fleeting escape, life's tempo marches on. Beyond the tavern's walls, the city's streets come alive with spectacle, an open-air theatre, where a simple wooden stage hosts dramas of morality and myth. The actors, clad in rough but colourful costumes, enact stories that echo with humour and reverence. You catch glimpses of a moral tale, perhaps a farmer's humble victory over greed, or a moral about humility and pride, performed with exaggerated gestures and a few hearty laughs. The audience's applause erupts in bursts, some clapping wildly, others silent in reflection, as if the night itself holds its breath. Nearby, a procession of flickering candles winds through the dark, moving past houses decked with garlands and banners, celebrating the harvest or a saint's festival. The scent of beeswax and fresh herbs fills the air as villagers carry their offerings, their prayers whispered softly, blending with the distant rhythmic toll of the town's bell or the faint chant of psalms. But not all entertainment is light-hearted. As the night deepens, you might notice groups of flagellants, some with ropes, others with whips, marching solemnly through the streets, their chants echoing like distant thunder. Their procession is a stark contrast to the joviality around them, an act of penance, an attempt to ward off the divine wrath or plague that still lurks in shadowed corners. You see curious onlookers, some with awe, others with suspicion, watching as they whip their backs in rhythmic rhythm, their faces caught between pain and devotion. The air thickens with incense and the faint, bitter smell of burnt herbs, an olfactory reminder of collective fears and hopes intertwined. In the midst of all this, your role as the healer, or perhaps a figure of respect, remains quietly present. Even amid the laughter and the dance, you catch the wary glances of those who remember the darkness that once threatened to swallow their world. Someone might approach you with a quick, anxious whisper, asking for a blessing or a talisman against bad luck. You might lean close, touching the edge of a roof or a windowsill, to cast a quick charm or a protective gesture, your hand a gentle talisman against the unseen forces that stir in the night. The community's gaze, a mixture of reverence and trepidation, rests briefly on you, grounding the moment with an unspoken understanding that even in celebration, shadows remain, lurking just beyond the flickering light. And so the night flows, a delicate dance of raucous joy and quiet prayer, of riso and inquietação. The music rises and falls, the voices lift and soften, and the city's heartbeat continues, sometimes loud, sometimes whispering, reminding you that all things, no matter how fleeting, are woven into the endless cycle of life and death. When the last notes fade into the dark, the distant toll of the bell responds, echoing like a reminder that every celebration bears within it the seed of silence. You smile softly, knowing that in this dance of shadows and light, the city's story is written anew each night, an eternal rhythm of beginnings and endings, of promises made beneath the watchful eyes of the stars. When you turn away from the lively street, the night wraps around you like a familiar cloak, gentle and unhurried. The world continues to spin quietly, insistently, whispering that after every burst of life, there's a moment of quiet, an inevitable return to stillness. And in that quiet, perhaps, lies the deepest truth, that everything begins again, just as surely as the dawn will break and the shadows will recede, only to return with the next night's song. You recall the first cry of a newborn, a tiny, piercing sound that echoes like a miniature bell, announcing a new life into a world both fragile and resilient. The midwife's hands, rough yet delicate, wrapped the child in a simple cloth, whispering prayers of protection. There was a rush, a breathless hope that this small being would thrive, even as you held your breath, aware of how fleeting that first moment of innocence truly is. Then comes the promise, an alliance sealed with a simple ring, a band of woven fabric or silver placed upon a finger at the doorstep of the small house or temple. The community gathered, their voices soft but filled with meaning, blessings spoken in whispers, a loaf of bread shared as a symbol of sustenance, a pinch of salt for life's trials. Hands clasped, eyes shining with hope, and a melody, brief yet profound, echoes in the air, an affirmation that this union, humble or grand, is part of the eternal cycle. The murmured song of the village, the rustle of fabric, the gentle strum of a lyre, all woven into the fabric of a moment that feels both fleeting and everlasting. And as time passes, the work begins, hands passing down tools, stories, and wisdom. An elder's voice, slow and steady, tells of the craft that sustains the family, the community, the spirit. A carved spindle, a worn-out plough, a carved wooden box, each object a silent witness to generations' hopes and struggles. Your own hands, perhaps, have held these relics, feeling the grooves, the weight of history embedded in their grain. The rhythm of life continues, each day a new page written in the dust, each task a thread in the tapestry of living. Then suddenly the quiet turns somber. A loved one lies on a simple cot, an unadorned bed, the linen rough against cold skin. The healer's hands, steady and gentle, anoint the forehead with oil, whisper prayers of peace, as whispers of mortality drift through the room like a breeze. When plague or illness strikes, the hurried moments are heavy with unspoken sorrow. The rites are brief, no grand processions, just the silent acknowledgement of what must come. The weight of the absent settles softly like dust on a treasured object as you stand between hope and resignation. You see the look in their eyes, calm perhaps or distant, and wonder how such small bodies carry so much memory, so much history. Outside, the village moves on, but the echoes linger. A bell tolls a deep, slow note, a reminder of the eternal rhythm, birth, life, death. A procession winds through the narrow street, candles flickering, their wax dripping like tears, as mourners carry the departed to their final resting place. The earth is cold beneath their feet, the soil waiting patiently, quietly accepting what must be returned to it. In some places, simple graves are marked with stones or inscriptions, reminders that each name, each story, is etched into the collective memory, softly spoken at family tables or whispered in prayer. The community gathers in remembrance, their voices low, their hearts heavy but gentle as they remember those who have gone, holding their memory like a fragile, glowing ember. You look around and see the icons of humility, vitrals painted with scenes of dance macabre, skulls that serve as quiet teachers of humility and mortality. The words from the ancient texts echo softly, a time to be born and a time to die, not as a curse, but as a sacred rhythm, a reminder of the natural order that cradles every beginning and end. And as the day dissolves into night, you close your eyes, the sounds fading into a gentle lullaby of the city, breathing softly around you. The candle's flame flickers, its light dimming gradually, casting shadows that dance like memories, fading yet lingering. You feel the quiet certainty that life's fleeting beauty is in itself a miracle. Every bread broken, every cup raised, every shared smile in a narrow street is part of this sacred dance, an ongoing testament to the resilience of hope amid inevitable change. Now, as the shadows deepen and the city's breath slows, you breathe in softly, feeling the steady rhythm of your own life, connected to this ancient cycle. The gentle glow of the candle dwindles, but the warmth remains. Close your eyes. The city continues quietly, patiently, just as it has for countless generations. And you, too, are part of this endless turning, born anew each day, promising, departing, in the gentle, infinite rhythm of life and death.